2016, Gary McLean sought out lawyers from across the country, is what I understand. There were no lawyers that would step up to the plate to come and help us with this legal matter or help the day school survivors. The story is that Gary McLean went on the computer to look at lawyers and somehow found Gowling. I can't remember the exact details anymore. But anyhow, he connected with Gowling, who was based out of Ottawa, specifically, I believe, Robert Winograd. And then from there, they proceeded with the case. In 2017, it was determined that this case would be moved to the federal courts rather than provincial courts because of legalities and how much more work it would be if it was done provincially. So it went into a federal court action. And the other piece to that, from what I understand, is because most of the schools in question were on First Nations territory. They were in First Nations communities and some, I believe, in Métis communities. So, and then in 2017, we had to start doing the paperwork. There was more people joining the class action. There was more people brought on to be the lead claimants. There was Marietta Buckshot from Ontario, Angela Sampson from BC, and there was about 6 of us. And then fast forward, in March of 2019, the government came to an agreement. They made an announcement in Ottawa. Gary had done so much work lobbying behind the scenes to move forward with this class action. Unfortunately, when the announcement was made, he moved on into the spirit world before he could physically see that happening. So for some of us, it was a proud moment, although sad because Gary wasn't physically there. I strongly believe he was there in spirit. I ended up becoming more involved after Gary's passing, and partly because of being a lead claimant, but also because his family and my First Nation depended on me to stand up and take the lead. So I did that reluctantly. But I'm just going to step back for a bit. So before the announcement, Gary had been calling me and saying to me, "Margaret, you need to finish your affidavit. You're holding us up. You're the only one who isn't fully completed." And at that time, I was really struggling. I was struggling because of my own history, my own trauma. And I'm just going to go back. I grew up in my First Nation, watched a lot of dysfunction within my family, had seen a lot of violence. I was physically and sexually abused as a child by family members. And I can openly talk about this now because, thank Creator, that I could talk to those in my family who abused me. And I've made peace with them, but it didn't take overnight to get there. So anyhow, part of my parenting, I gave birth to 7 children. In some ways, sometimes I feel like I failed as a parent, but I also tell myself I did the best I could with what I knew, learning from books and talking to people and all that kind of stuff. I lost a 5-year-old son in 1988. I was very young. I turned to alcohol to numb the pain and to deal with storms because I would have anxiety attacks and be terrified when a storm was coming because my 5-year-old died in a in a very bad tornado winds type of storm. So that kind of trauma, I know, has been felt and seen by so many of us. Anyhow, when Gary pushed me to get my affidavit done, just a few years prior, I had lost another son. He was 29 years old. I was told he died of an accidental overdose. So at that point in my life, I was really broken, as it were. And I would tell Sonny boy Gary, so Gary took it upon himself to come to my home and sit with me and walk through the affidavit so we could support each other, because we went to the same school, same community. So Gary would come to my house and share his experiences from day school with me. So for me, it opened up a lot of old wounds. I did not realize how much so until I started talking about it. And for a while, I started to feel even more broken, because not only was I dealing still with the death of my 29-year-old son, but here I was talking about day school stuff that I didn't realize I still carried. Like, as a leader, a community leader, as a mom, I could stand up here and openly talk about the impacts of residential schools, how they harmed our people in so many ways. But I never realized how much it would impact me. So I went on, finished my affidavit. We went and signed documents with the lawyers, and back to March 2019, an announcement was made. And dear Gary wasn't with us anymore, but I always know he's here. Sometimes when I say awesome, I think of Gary, because I think that was his favorite word. But anyhow, in May of 2019, we had hearings here in Winnipeg. I was asked to be part of those hearings. It was a 3-day court session, and the big reason for that was all of a sudden there was lawyers from different parts of the country that were intervening in court with this lawsuit, so that kind of stalled us. I wasn't very happy about that, because for me, what I felt was, I knew Gary told me they searched and searched for lawyers, nobody would step up to the plate. Now there's an announcement made, and all of a sudden there's lawyers coming out of the woodwork deciding they wanted a piece of the pie. And so I very openly, loudly said things through the media and actually in the courtroom to the lawyers that were there, because when I came in, there was a lineup of survivors all the way out into the hallway. And in the courtroom, most of them were lawyers. I felt very uncomfortable with that and stated that our people shouldn't be out there in the hallway and these lawyers shouldn't be in this room, because this is our lawsuit and they should come in, these lawyers should be asked to leave. And I was surprised they were actually told to leave so more of our people could come in. But anyhow, that piece with the lawyers intervening stalled us again for a few months. Gowling dealt with that case, or those interventions, and so we were moving forward once again. Yay, we're moving ahead. So the next thing was, there was a chief in Ontario, along with another lawyer, who intervened, and once again we were going to be stalled. And it was really, I don't even know how I felt, but I couldn't believe that we kept running into roadblocks as we tried to move forward. And in the meantime, I was getting people calling me, inboxing me, and giving me heck, and to the point where I was saying, hey, I'm only one person and I'm really trying and I can only do so much. So Somewhere along the way, I started, thank goodness, to work for Grand Chief Jerry Daniels and Miigwech. I'm honored to be working there. And I had support and help there to start to move things forward, and even at the political forum. So in December, I went to Ottawa, and some of you might know we had a resolution passed at that forum asking for that chief, Chief Ottawa, and his lawyer Schultz to back off, that we would help them with their lawsuit if they were going to go ahead and move on with one. And I think it was beginning of January, the national chief met with Chief Ottawa and others, and he agreed to back away and abandon that lawsuit, or intervening in our case, but rather proceeding with their own lawsuit. And it was at that forum as well, we passed a resolution stating that we'd support the day schools that were not recognized in our lawsuit. So 2 weeks ago, the claims process was supposed to start, and the frustrating part now is feeling that our lawyers, Gowling, has not done enough to ensure that we have the resources we need at the ground level to provide people with help filling out their claims forms, but as well providing people with resources like Eva talked about to ensure that we have the help we need when we start to be triggered with the past that still haunts us today. And I've talked to Eva about how we can, rather than rebuilding anything, looking at what resources are there, we would try and build on what we already have, because there's already very good work being done in terms of helping and supporting us as a result of all the damage that's been done from these schools and the 60 scoop, and it could go on and on. Last week, some of us had to pretty much I threatened the lawyers and said something to the effect where you're going to have to help us make damn sure that we have the resources to help our people with healing, the resources to help with the claims process, because that should be done ASAP. They said that Health Canada is now committed to providing additional resources, but we need to come up with a plan. They didn't fully meet my standards, I guess, when it came to filling out the claims forms, because the response I got was that they were going to go out as lawyers to each of the communities across the country. I just think that would take a long, long time, and I don't agree with that, because our people are dying, and the ones who call me, some of them are in very bad health. So that's kind of, I guess, where we are at. We met with them just on Friday of last week. My understanding is they are going to come up with a plan. Sometimes I don't know how to share all this information to make sure everybody gets it. I will continue to try and find other creative ways of sharing the information, whether it be through Facebook or band offices, through SCO. But in a nutshell, that's where we're at. Miigwech.